Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. This is Speakeasy Podcast TV, and today our special guest we have Annie
Cazares.
Cazares. I swear I knew I was going to get bumbled up on that one.
You're good.
So he works at
Legends
Comics.
Yes.
And he's pretty knowledgeable in the comic and action hero, Comic Con, whatever you're into, that comic book stuff. He's very inspirational on that.
Oh, thank you for having me, man.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, I've known this guy since high school, so
yeah, man.
We skated together in same year as high school. What was your?
Pretty much. I'm class of '09.
Okay, you're after me.
I was after you. One thing's for sure, though, among all hobbies, that was one of them.
Yeah, I think, and that was one of the biggest hobbies that brought, I think, a lot of people together in Fresno High was skateboarding. So if you like to skate, that was yeah. So first off, how have you been?
I've been pretty good.
Good?
I just came back, I want to say 2 nights ago from Pasadena from Power Morphicon 2022. That is a whole dedicated convention for Power Rangers. They celebrated 29 years, and they're going to explode the heck out of it later on for 30 years, because us 30-year-olds can afford this stuff now.
Oh, yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
So what inspired you into comics?
So this kind of started off at the age of 7, almost 8 years old. Mm-hmm. My parents were getting notification from the school that I was not reading. I did not want to read. I was barely learning English, how to speak it, but I didn't want to read it. My dad took me to the Manchester Mall, for those that are OG, Manchester Mall. I was walking towards the collectible zone, and my dad immediately tells me, "Hey, mijo, I heard you can't read." And I go, "So?" And I go, "What do you mean, so, mijo? Reading's the key to life. Go, let's get a comic book. Maybe it's easier, no toys." And I remember getting a Gambit issue 1, 1993. It was black with gold trimming, and the rest was history. I must have read that book a million times. At the same time, I was watching X-Men animated series, so I can hear the distinctive voices as I sounded out the English words. And yeah.
So that was your first comic?
That was my very first comic book.
You have a copy of that?
Yes, I do. I have the copy, actually.
We want to see that.
Check it
Definitely.
out right here. I got it slabbed and graded. Yes. Got it slabbed and graded. And it's the same McCoy. It's the worst grading you can find. It's a 0.5. Below that's no grade.
It's had a little bit of... It's had some damage, huh?
Oh, yeah.
But it's a collectible to you.
It's a holy grail for me. This is what started me reading comic books. On top of that, too, this comic book introduced me to X-Men, which introduced me to Marvel, which introduced me to the heroes I've read, and then making me realize there's also DC Comics. If it wasn't for this book, I wouldn't have gone into comic books, or reading for that matter.
That's awesome.
Oh, yeah, man.
Can you show them the front?
Oh, the front?
Yeah.
Oh, the back here?
Or the back, sorry.
This is the back.
Well, I thought that was the back.
Oh, my bad.
It has the barcode on the front,
yeah.
I guess. But
it's on the front. I also have it signed by 2 of the 3 creators of this, Klaus Janson and Lee Weeks.
How long did it take you to find those guys to sign that?
Literally two months ago.
2 months? Oh, wow.
So I went to Heroes Con in North Carolina. Thank you, Legends, by the way, on that one. We drove all the way to North Carolina, and this con called Heroes Con was purely unadulterated writers and artists. Mm-hmm. Not to bombard on pop culture, but this con was served for the creators. It's kind of hard to hear Robert Downey Jr. this and Scarlett Johansson that. Oh, the creator spawned somewhere there, and the creator of Deadpool, I guess he's there too, sure. That hurts to hear. So this one catered to all the creators and writers, both old and new, and I guess they happen to be there, and I just so happen to have this boy over here. I'm like, here, thank you for teaching me English.
I bet you took that with you every time. You were like, I'm waiting for that day I'm going to run into these guys.
Not only did I take it to these cons, I also took it to the comic book shop, just showing it to people like, hey, look, hey, look, hey, look. I was so proud. I'm proud of this book, man.
So, what are some of your favorite action heroes?
Well, the one I really got into. Oh, I'm so sorry. The one I really got into was Captain America by like 9 or 10, maybe a little bit older. I liked the fact that he was kind of like a guy that tries to do the right thing even if it killed him. You know, you have like these heroes that are like, oh, my parents died this. Oh, I'm a bad boy that. Like, That's cool and all, but this guy here was like, hey, you're gonna go to jail. I was like, no, I must. It's the right thing to do. You know what I mean? And I thought to myself, that's cool, but he could have cheated. He could have done this. He could have done that. But he's going the straight arrow way to do the right thing. That's like the G-est thing in the world. Like, all you have in this world is your word. And that's what he tries to do in the comic books.
Kind of the more realistic way of doing it.
By that time, I was skateboarding. I was kind of rebellious. So I think that's, out of all things, a fictional character kind of strayed me into the right thing.
Okay.
So.
So what's a insight on your whole comic book collection? Yeah, I mean, I know I wanted you to bring a little bit more, but that's fine. I'm sure you have more than you could. Yeah.
So because I've collected since I was 7 years old, from like 7 to like maybe 18, I didn't have a job. So I depended heavily on Manchester Mall when they had the Beanie Baby shows. For those that are OG, y'all remember that. The Beanie Baby shows would have some comic book booths with $1 or less comics.
Beanie Babies, man.
Yeah, they're making a comeback, by the way.
Are they?
We've had a few calls in the shop, yeah. Anyway, so my collection at first was purely unadulterated $1 or less comics. By the time I was 18, I finally had money, so I spent on regular comic books. And that collection changed because I condensed it, because that's a lot of real estate. I want to say 3 months ago, I finally got rid of my last short box of dollar comics from that time.
Oh, wow.
It got that bad. So I thought to myself, if I'm going to have a collection that big, we're talking a good bricks filled, I'm going to have stuff that I want. Not saying that dollar comics are not cool, but I know someone else can enjoy it the way I did years ago. So now the collection is mainly almost every Captain America. I'm about 15 books away. It's bad. Help. I'm also collected to like the newer indie stuff, like the new independent publishings too. Sometimes it's not always about heroes, sometimes it's other stories too. And just current Marvel stuff. I will say I do have some rare CGCs, the slabbed and graded comic books. I have those. And my newest venture is Heavy Metal Magazine, which is a magazine filled with sci-fi, fantasy, a little bit of erotica. But yeah.
Well, that's usually how it is when you start getting a big collection of things. You accumulate so much that you gotta figure out what do I need and what do I not need, because at some point it's gonna be too much. It's gonna overtake your life, and you're not gonna have any room.
Yeah, and on top of that too, there's many ways of enjoying the comic book. Like that's something I always tell the shop. It's okay to enjoy the comic book as a reader. Mm-hmm. This guy. There's also people that enjoys variant covers, meaning different covers of comic books, so artist-wise, or you only follow a certain writer, a certain artist, certain superheroes, or certain publishers. There is no right or wrong way to enjoy a comic book. So in this example, roping it back in, as a reader, I must have read all those dollar bin comics a million times, and they were never linear, ever. So I know someone else that reads probably enjoy that. That's how I kind of just thought about, like, I need to condense this so I can collect this.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, as a reader.
Mm-hmm. So for you, is it Marvel or DC?
Ooh.
I thought that would be a good question.
I say both and none, and let me tell you why. So the Marvel I remember picking up because of the dollar bins was like 1980s and older. Mm-hmm. All that stuff was kind of hokey at the time, was kind of funny, like, oh, you'll pay for that, Spider-Man type thing. I like that. Marvel nowadays, I feel like, again, not hating on them, but it seems to be playing out the same thing, and I'm like, I've read this before, I think I'm okay, so I'm very selective on this. Mm-hmm. DC nowadays has been just Batman. There's, for every, Aquaman title, there's about 5 different Batman titles on top of that. The worst part is that these Batman titles are super good. Mm-hmm. So I hope and pray as I'm reading a Batman book, I'm like, dang, it's good. Mm-hmm. So DC now, because the Batman stuff is really good. It really is. And then on top of that, to say the very least, indie, for every DC comic or Marvel, I have about 5 other different titles, because you'll always start at a number 1, and those are always fun. Whether you have a bad read or a good read, whether it's thriller, drama, maybe its own superhero thing, those are fun too. So I guess you can say both and none. Marvel, Marvel, late 90s, late 80s and older, DC now, and indie, regardless.
I want to say, for me personally, I grew up liking Batman a lot.
There you go.
He was probably my favorite superhero as a child growing up. But I think as I got older, maybe more in my teens, I liked Marvel better.
Yeah.
So I went from like DC to Marvel for me personally.
Batman, just like Spider-Man, Batman has an array of villains. His universe is super huge. You can have a Gotham thing alone and not have Batman and still be pretty good because that universe alone is good. On the other side of Marvel, you have Spider-Man, you have the iconic bad guys there too. Yeah. To a point, if you ever read a comic book, you read, example, a Captain America comic book, you'll have one where Doc Ock, Dr. Octopus is in it, and you're like, wait, that's Spider-Man's here. What's going on? Yeah. Oh, he's got that much, so... Hell yeah.
So I'm aware you do have your own YouTube podcast. How long have you been involved in that?
Only 2 months. I'm so fresh on this one.
Fresh into it. See, I thought you had been doing it for a while, so I thought it had been at least a year or two since you've been doing it. But other than that, like, how's it been going then?
It's been pretty good. So first and foremost, this was an idea I've always wanted to do. I've been wanting to do this like since I was like 20 years old, like 19, 20 years old, when I had money in these comic books and I kept raving about the stories, how good or bad it was. I've been wanting to do this, but I've been so scared to talk about it because this was around the time too where comic books were finally getting a little popular, but I still felt like indifferent because I've been in it. I got that tail end a lot earlier where comic books weren't cool. And then now, because of the movies, comic books are cool. And I thought to myself, I don't want to be involved at all, but I want to speak and speak. It took me literally years later and 2 months ago to finally say, you know what? I'm just trying to do this because I like it.
But you got to derive yourself from those people who are bandwagoners, I guess is what you would call them. People who are just getting into it because, you know, how when Spider-Man first came out with Sam Raimi's version, I think that's when, there was Daredevil before that. Yeah. Horrible. Crappy movie. I mean, don't get me wrong. As a kid, when I went and saw Daredevil, what year was that? It was like 2002, 2003. I was probably like 12 or 13 years old.
Yeah, I must have been like 9 or 10. Yeah.
I thought it was good. I thought, I came out. I had my, I thought it was good. But I guess as I got older, everybody got older. Everybody was like, that was crap.
Well, I mean... when I was mentioning that too, I always talk about like that's my glass half empty situation where I've had Wolverine fans of all fans make fun of me for reading Captain America. So I was even already weird in between that fan base. Yeah. But I also like to see it as like half glass full too. So yeah, there's people that are kind of like bandwagoners, if you will, but the glass half full is like it's okay to just like the movies, and it's okay that you got introduced to the movies or shows first, because I'm a product of the shows first. It was my gambit, it was X-Men animated series. So especially working at a shop, I don't want to be like not pointing at anybody, but I don't want to be anyone in the past where they're like, oh, so you don't know where Superman came from, get out my store type thing. Like, no. If anyone asks me, I'm gonna like give it my vengeance and say, you know what, I can help you out. Because we get a lot of these people. We get a lot of people coming in and being like, hey, I just watched Black Panther, or I just watched Captain Marvel. I would like to know more about this stuff, because I hate waiting for 2 years for the next movie. And I'm like, say less. Here are the racks. Let me get you.
So you're willing to still help people. You're not one of those people who's, like you said, get out of my comic store. Because,
pretty much, man.
You got to be optimistic with people. You got to understand everybody's at a different level with this. Like,
yes.
You got to remain with an open mind.
It's only bad if you make fun of the guy, but it's not bad if you just got into the movies. And it's okay to just like the movies. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's cool. It's all intro. I call those movies the gateway. The gateway, like they open that door. It's like, oh, that's right, it's a comic book. Maybe I should go to my local comic book shop.
What do they call that in the artistic terms? It's subjective.
Subjective.
It's subjective.
Subjective, yes. Not everyone's gonna like everything else. That's what I was mentioning earlier, where there's no right or wrong way to enjoy a comic book. Even though I read my stuff and I collect my stuff, necessarily speaking, is not the right or wrong way. It is my way. And I like to influence that, but if it's not your way, that's fine. And that's roping it back to the YouTube channel, that's what I want to teach the people on YouTube. I want to teach the people that it's okay to enjoy a certain way, and I consider myself a student of comic books because I try to get a little bit of everything. Like, I have collected slabbed and graded stuff. I've collected Silver Age stuff. I've collected Golden Age stuff. Mm-hmm. I've collected some really random, scary stuff. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I've flipped and sold comic books, which is probably my least worst, my least liked thing, but I can respect it because people do it. Yeah. You know what I mean? That's fine.
So the way you kind of probably see yourself is you have years of experience in this, but you're learning.
Yes.
But you also enjoy teaching.
Yes.
Educating. You know.
Yes. That my inspiration on that is Back to the Future Part 3. Okay. I don't know if you guys remember, but Claire was saved by the horses and the carriages, and she noticed that he liked science, and she goes, "Science? Oh, well, what kind of science? Astrology, chemistry?" And then Doc, being the G that he is, he still goes, "Actually, I'm a student of all sciences." And I'm like, hey, I like that. Like, he's a G, but he still considers himself as a student of all sciences. I would like to go on record and say I'm a student of comic books.
All right. So do you have any collectibles that are high in value?
I have two, and I brought two of them.
Okay.
So my first one here, I'm going to give this one the headliner part. This here is a 3.5 graded Famous Funnies issue 72.
Oh, wow.
This is from July 1940.
It looks very vintage.
Very, very vintage. So we had, a workshop at our comic book shop by the owner. His name's Derek. Shout out, homie. Anyway, he talked about Golden Age era. The very first issue of the same title is considered the very first comic book. That's gnarly. So we're talking from comic strips to binded book. It's not new stories, mind you, but it is still stories from the comic strips binded into a book, considering it to be the very first comic book of issue 1, of course. And my accentuated situation was like, I'm going to go on YouTube and find the oldest thing I can find, and I totally found issue 72, which was good. Two more facts, if you don't mind. This one is issue 72. This was celebrating 10 years being in publication. It has early Jack Kirby artwork. For those that don't know, Jack Kirby is one of the few creators in Marvel in the 60s for the Silver Age era. And last but not least, because it has early Jack Kirby artwork, 8 months later, Publishing Speaking, from March 1941, was considered that he co-created Captain America Comics #1, the one where he punches Hitler in the face. This is 8 months away before that. This is the closest I'm probably ever going to have to Captain America Comics #1 from Timely, when Marvel was Timely.
Wow.
So this is legit.
So 3.5, is that a good grade?
For Golden Age, yes. It is a very good grade. And on top of that, remember we were talking about how I get a taste a little bit of how people enjoy differently. This was one of my few examples of trying to learn how to grade. So I remember looking at it, and it was a pretty good condition. I'm thinking to myself, okay, so realistically, maybe a 2, trying to humble it out. Realistically, a 2, but, I want to go for that 4, because that's a good grade. And I got a 3.5. I'm like, hey, I'm getting there.
Well, so the 5 is the highest, right?
No, 5's not the highest, but for Golden Age, meaning that's from 1940s, I think earlier in the 30s, that is a pretty good grade. Remember, this stuff was, not in comic book shops. Comic book shops did not exist till, I want to say the 80s. So whenever we had comic books, these were in grocery stores. This was around the time of World War II. Yeah. So they're either A, in good condition because no one bought at the time, or B, it went through the newsstands. Oh, I'm trying to find this. I'm trying to find my newspaper. So it got beaten and beaten and beaten through all the years. Mm-hmm. So this is a pretty good one, especially in time age. So
awesome. It looks great.
Oh, it's so pretty. And
that's definitely something, when you have kids, you're going to pass that down.
I hope so. That'd be nice.
Or you could always just not tell them.
I would be irresponsible since where I work, I'll tell you that.
That's true.
And my next one, which is my personal one, and this is good. This is Captain America Captain America issue 100, when he came back from the ice, signed by Stan Lee. Right? I believe here. Check it out, dog.
I just gotta touch that. I just gotta touch it a little bit. that's Stan Lee's signature. He's no longer with us. Rest in peace. But he was the greatest.
Yeah, man. So, fun little fact: this comic book, Captain America Comics, before issue 100, was considered Tales of Suspense 99 and older. Around that time, they were bringing Silver Age. We're talking 60s now.
Okay.
They were bringing in new characters and bringing characters from the past. Marvel said, "Hey, let's bring back Captain America from our timely times." He goes, "Oh, you mean that propaganda comic book? Sure. Where do we bring him in? Let's bring him back in that comic book Tales of Suspense and Avengers #4. Let's do that. Yeah, let's do that. And let's just say he was in suspended animation this whole time. Sure." So when Tales of Suspense hit issue 100, they changed the title to Captain America 100. So this is its #1 technically to what we know to this day. So that has its own history. And I actually got this signed personally. I got to meet him. He was a cool dude. Mm-hmm. I was in line. It was my very first con, LA Comic Con, then at the time Stan Lee's Kamikaze Expo. I was scared because everyone had really cool stuff to get signed. And this is, I don't know if you can tell, but this is not the best copy in the world. It really isn't the best copy of a very, very good comic book. But when I got to his line, it was so in awe, I still apologized to him. I go, "Man, I'm so sorry that this is not the best thing you signed." And he's just like, he signs it, picks up the comic book. He's like, "How's that?"
It's still an honor to him because he gets to make somebody else happy. He always seemed like that type of dude. Like, how was his personality?
His personality for a 90-year-old was amazing. I struggled waking up this morning. I struggled waking up at 11 a.m. And this man, 90-something years old, he keeps his chin up and walks like a cat. And he had a strong grip, by the way, because after I got this, I got a handshake, which you shouldn't do because it's sign and go, sign and go. Mm-hmm. He shook his hand. He had a strong grip. Yeah.
So
it's intimidating.
His last movie that he was in was Venom, right?
The last movie? I think so.
Yeah, I think that was in 2018, right before he passed away.
I think it was that one. I assumed it was Endgame. Unless
maybe
that was wrong.
Maybe it was.
Because I remember it was Endgame, and it was like the most cameos of cameos. So it was like, "Make love, not war," and being in the theater, it was like, oh.
So, Comic Cons. I know you have some experience with Comic Cons.
Yeah. So, on my own, I've been going to that same con that I was mentioning, LA Comic Con, formerly known as Stan Lee's Kamikaze Expo. I've been going to that one for 8 years. I've been going to that one because that one was one of the cheaper ones. You know what I mean? That's a wrong word. Not cheaper, but more inexpensive. But they still had really cool guests. We heard about this when I was working at the Carousel at Manchester Mall. Hey, another thing. So they had a little show. You know, had that little shows, and they told me about it. I told my 2 cousins and my little brother, we got to go. I got my license barely at the time. I'd never driven in L.A. I totally drove to L.A. We went there. And then for the 8 years, we've had a good different lineup. So fast forward to, say, back in January, I went to my first con as a vendor for Legends Comics and Games. We went to Albuquerque Comic Con. We drove to New Mexico. By the way, my first time being out of state ever. Yeah, I'm so homegrown here in Fresno.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a lot to do when you just got your license.
Yeah. Another thing too. This was one of the first cons outside. Not only outside, but it's also a different con. So this con was more guest based, more heavy based on celebrities more than comic books. Mm-hmm. So we were a vendor. We had our vendor situation, but our artists were array. So you had Corey Taylor from Slipknot.
Oh, wow.
You had a few wrestlers from WWE in the past. You've had that little girl that played Robert Downey Jr. Robert Downey Jr.'s daughter. That was I Love You 3000. I bumped into her. That was weird. That was a good one. And then fast forward to 2 months ago, I went to North Carolina for Heroes Con, like I was mentioning, the one that's artist and writer based. Mm-hmm. That was good. And then this past weekend, we went to Pasadena for Power Morphicon. That's an interesting one. Power Rangers are a super heavy title. Us 30-year-olds can spend money on that.
Yeah, I know we can. Best memories at some of those?
Besides the Stan Lee one of my favorite ones is when I met Tommy Wiseau from The Room.
Really? I remember you telling me about that. We were talking because I remember I made a post. I was like, I just watched The Room, and then I watched the Disaster Artist.
Yeah.
And great, dude. James Franco did such a great job portraying Tommy Wiseau. If you're not familiar with this guy, he made one of the worst films ever made. But it's like the worst, best films ever made.
The funny part about that movie was that he wasn't intending to make the worst film. He really thought he wanted to be like a James Dean.
He thought he was making an Oscar film.
He wanted to get that Oscar on that performance. And the Disaster Artist movie was super good. The book, the one book that's a chapter book I read, even better. On top of that, I got that signed by not only him, but Greg Sestero, the author, and also the guy that played Mark.
I think I remember you saying he was really cringy.
He was, everyone was cringy, super cringy. Yeah, he's just like, oh, hey, anchor man, because of my anchor. Stay for raffle. He was super rad. That's one of my favorite memories. I guess one more would be the fact that I've made friends with Power Rangers. So one of the events that we've had at Legends, we've had Power Rangers signing autographs in our shop. And then we go to like these cons where they're at. You know, one of the better memories was when I go over there and they're like, Andy, what's up? I'm like, what up, dude? You know, those are one of the better memories, just, you know, feeding the ego.
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome. Besides meeting some of those great people, like with this, everything that we've talked about, what are your goals with it? What with your hobby? Like, what do you plan? How far do you plan on taking this?
That's a good question.
Final question.
Yeah. So, the goal on a personal level is just to keep this rolling as much as I can. Capturing your childhood is always the hardest, especially when, you know, you grow up, you have more responsibilities, you know, you have kids and you have a demanding job. It's hard. It's hard to keep up with your hobbies. As a skateboarder alone, I think we can talk about that.
It's sad because it's kind of sad because it's like you get in your 30s and you have a stable job, you have money to do it, but you don't have the time. That's my dad used to always say that. You either got the money and the time, or you ain't got the time or the money.
So, but because my goal, my personal goal to be in this as long as I can, I wanted to jump ship and work at the places that are my hobbies. People totally tell me not to work in places with your hobbies because it'll ruin the magic or the pizzazz of it. I personally think, in my opinion,
it depends on the person.
Yeah, it depends on the person.
Yeah.
For example, me, I thought to myself, no way, I love the behind the scenes. I love seeing these cons that are empty build up, the drama between, and then build down like all empty. And like, to me, that's interesting. I love origins. As a good comic book guy, that is, you know what I mean? I love origins. So on a personal level, I'm interested. I'm learning. I want to keep this rolling till the good Lord takes me home, on top of other hobbies that I have. So that's the personal goal.
You guys have a lot of Pokemon stuff?
Yes, we do.
I'm a Pokemon collector.
So we'll have like the regular packs, and at our Fresno shop, we'll have like the single copies, the single ones.
Okay,
and then
cool.
Another cool shop I'd like to shout out is Go Back Gaming. Go Back Gaming is actually in Tower District. They opened up close by to Circle K, run by our boy Go Back Victor. He's a cool dude.
I'll have to check that out.
And then going back to real quick, my personal goal. So as a goal for the outside, I would like to teach people, if you want to get into comic books, where to begin, and to really take away the whole what's the right way or the wrong way. I want to teach people that there is no right or wrong way. And what better way for me to teach people that than to be in it myself, away from the reading aspect that's my personal favorite. Yeah. No matter how many things I learn, I still go back to my reading roots. I love that. But to enjoy other things is okay too. So.
Yeah, dude. Awesome story. I'm glad we could bring you on and talk about what inspired you to do all this. Guys, thanks for listening and tuning in. Annie, it was good having you.
Yeah, man.
Also, Art Hop is coming up this week, September 1st. Be sure to check that out. We'll have a commercial cutting to that next. And we'll see you on the next one. Thanks, guys.
Later, dudes.
Who's buzzing? Who's loose? Who's having a good time? That's what I'm talking about, you guys. Man, we got some good talent out here. And you know what? Tonight is the snowball effect.